I was lucky that my parents have got a little bit of land at the back of our house, nothing major, just like 3 acres. And to be honest, I had like a little quad and a little grass buggy, and I just used to love rising that around the field, you know, kind of a bit of a petrol head from a young age. And then went on holiday to Cornwall and just had to go on a rental car. And, you know, I already, like I say, enjoyed driving stuff. Had to go on this rental car. I was like, wow, I love that. Kind of came home, looked it up on the internet, and off we went. Rest is history. Went to PFI, which, funnily enough, my dad now runs and owns. Bought my first kart from there, and yeah, just whatever happened.
And when did you start? Like, what age did you start?
So I was 8.5. 8.5. My first proper year of karting was 9 years old. So I did August 2005. Did like my test, first few clubbies, and then 2006 was my first proper season of doing a championship and stuff like that.
So that's funny because I'm obviously older than you. I'm 30, and we started in the same year. I didn't race in karting. Yeah. I started end of 2005.
Jake probably with his GCSEs or something as well at that time. I don't know.
Mate, I was. I was doing IB, mate. I was a step above A level.
Racing wasn't even on the radar for you.
No, it weren't. No, but I remember coming into it. I started in easy kart. But I remember coming into Super One in 2011, and like at that point, you were properly. I think you were doing KF3. Maybe,
yeah.
On the top kart or something.
Yeah, that was it. That was my first year racing steps driver. So I was going for the title against George, and Callum O'Keefe won it that year. So yeah, that was that was a good year. I won my second GP that year as well.
Already at that age, I hadn't even started racing at 15 or 16, and you've won 2 GPs at that age.
I just remember coming into the paddock, and you kind of had like this. You kind of had this fan base, like in the grandstand at PF, the Barney Army. That was it,
Represent.
Got it now. It's still got it.
Yeah. I think I had more fans then than I did now, in all honesty.
It's because you're winning.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can't talk, can I?
So, with the karting though, you've raced some big names. Or you came up with the era when you were, you know, racing with Verstappen and Leclerc and George. Obviously, was Albon around that at that point as well?
Yeah. So, you know, you kind of. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because wherever you are, you always feel like when you're in there and racing it, you're against like some of the best people it has been for a while. But yeah, luckily enough, from the age of 12 to 15, like, you know, my kind of prime karting career, raced in the UK to start with before I took on international competition, was going against Albon. You know, he'd already done a year in juniors before me, and when I came in, you know, he was right on the top of his game, sort of dominated it. He was an exceptional karter. George, me and George literally started at the exact same time. We got our first karts pretty much the same time, and we was batting around PF on our novice plates together. You know, near enough did my whole career with him until, you know, I went to GTs, and I think he did all right. Can't remember what he's up to now.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, so you know, we those two, especially on UK competition, along with a lot of other good guys that just never got their break. And then when I went into international competition, was teammates with Leclerc for 2 years. You know, got a really good relationship with him. And the year I became European champion was going head to head with Max, and had a few hairy moments with him.
Yeah,
great, all that impressive.
You beat him to the European Championship, didn't you?
Yeah, well, so it was at me and him going into the final round, and we actually had a crash, and that he appealed it and lost the appeal. So he raced under appeal because he pretty much put me on my head, and then he got disqualified after the event. So I ended up winning it, but had he not have raced under appeal, he wouldn't have won it anyway, kind of thing. So that
deserved a title then, that one.
Yeah, it was kind of one of them. It would have been nice. Oh yeah, that was the highlight of my karting career, really, to win that European champion. It was my first year in seniors as well. Won the British that year also. So yeah, that was probably my best year. That was 2012.
Yeah,
2012. Yeah. Seems like
still in karting.
2011 as well. You picked up McLaren, didn't you?
Yeah. So that's it. So it was actually at the end of 2010. So that year was my second year of juniors. Just moved to Mick Barrett Racing, who were the team at the time that just literally won everything the year before with Albon. You know, my dad kind of, you know, Barrett's have always renowned for being one of the best, if not the best team in the karting paddock. But they do kind of charge pretty highly for their services. So, my dad really gave me everything that he had, emptied the bank, and put me there for a year, and it really paid off. I had a great season, went head to head with Dennis for the title, who was, heavily funded by the Racing Steps. And I think going against someone like Jake with such a difference in budget kind of just opened a few eyes. And I was lucky enough to be picked up by the McLaren F1 Young Driver Program and the Racing Steps Foundation all at the end of 2010. So that sort of where my career took off really at the end of that season.
Yeah, I mean, having an opportunity like that at such a young age, obviously you've got to produce the results in karting like you did do. But then do you think, fast track you into your career? Obviously, Formula One's the main game or main aim, and you want to, be racing against the people that you've been racing against. You've name dropped Leclerc and Verstappen and whatever, but they got to F1 for whatever reason. And what people don't see or don't realize is actually there's so many people that maybe could have had they had the right break.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I have no doubt about it that had it not have been for the Racing Steps Foundation and McLaren, I would never in a million years have made it as a racing driver. I would have simply been a professional karter. I would have been driving for the PFI karting team. That was, to be honest, that was already my plan during 2010. My dad, like I said to you, my dad gave it his all to kind of give me my one chance, and that year was literally it. The plan was already in place for me to join the PFI team for 2011 as their junior driver and race for them. And he would have put me into Europe, but it would have been nowhere near on the scale that Racing Steps gave me an opportunity. And on the back of that, I might have got a cheap deal for Formula Renault for 1 year or something, but that would have been it. I'm very realistic that had it not have been for those, that big support, I wouldn't have made it. And they all made it to Formula One, and they're classed as the current greats of Formula One. But when you put it in realistic terms, considering where I come from, to be able to call myself a professional racing driver now and race all around the world, just come back from Asian Le Mans, times like this where it's so difficult just for normal people to leave the house, to be able to travel to Dubai and Abu Dhabi and race and still be able to do what I love and get paid for it, is just amazing, really. So just got to be grateful for where you get to. And I'm sure it's the same for you boys. I've name dropped a few people, but I'm fully aware that Jake was in Formula Renault at the same time as me and raced against the same people, and you've raced against even more mature names. So I think we all probably have the same, we're all three of us are good lads. I'm sure we have the same thought on it.
Well, I think we always go into it where maybe not from the first level in karting, but it's definitely from your sort of end of your karting career to first year of karts, you've kind of got Formula One in mind, haven't you? Most of us have. It's it's just natural, especially if you're given the chance, either family, sponsor, in your case, Racing Steps and McLaren. That's the goal. But I think, like you say, when you put some context to it from where, yourself, speaking about myself and Nick as well, where we all came from, it's to be able to race and earn money and race around the world. It's I think, I don't want to say you would have snapped someone's hand off if they offered you that when you were still in karting, but you probably would have.
Yeah. It's a tough one to answer, in all honesty. I was actually having this conversation with someone yesterday that 2014 and 15. In 2015, the only reason I knew about sports car racing is because my driver coach at Formula Matt Howson was driving in LMP2 with KCMG. But other than that, I literally had no idea about the world of sports cars and GTs. And it was only sort of at the end of 2016 when the Racing Steps said they were coming to an end that I even sort of discovered the world of GT3. And that's the same year I did my first Blanc Pan race. The goal for me was very much to, I said that I'd always said that I wanted to be a Formula One driver. But like I said, Jake, if they said, look, you're not going to make it, but we can still make you a professional driver, of course you would have taken it. Because at the end of the day, it's still got four wheels and engine. Yeah. Everyone's going to try and win it as well. And the buzz from winning, I'm sure, it's not Monaco or whatever, but you still, when you win and you beat everyone else and you've done the best job you can, it's still just as good as a feeling inside.
Yeah. I think that opportunity, obviously, that RSF and McLaren gave you to even go into cars, you won a championship. I think it was the year when we raced together as well.
Yeah.
And then won races in F3 as well. And I wonder if they didn't give you that option, if you look at it from the point of view, if they didn't give you that opportunity just to win those races and that championship, you wouldn't have been able to walk straight into a factory seat, so to speak, with McLaren.
Yeah, of course not. I was very, all those opportunities to win those races wouldn't have been there without support of the Racing Steps Foundation, especially. And yeah, of course, I wouldn't have been able to walk into a factory seat. It doesn't matter how good enough you are. If you haven't got a good reputation to go with it, you're never going to be able to sort of do anything, you know. So yeah, you're exactly right.
Nice.
And just for the viewers, Ben, could we just explain what the Racing Steps Foundation was? Because it folded a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So, you know, it was set up by a man called Graham Sharp, who, you know, was a successful businessman. And he, you know, had just, you know, amazing of him, really sort of was passionate about racing. And he basically wanted to give young British drivers who had the talent and the ability to be able to, you know, become a professional driver or potentially be a Formula One driver, but they didn't have the family funds behind them in order to do so. So they picked up quite a few of us, Jack Harvey, Oliver Turvey, Oliver Rowland, Jake Dennis. You know, I'm sure there's a couple that I missed there, but
Collado, right?
Yeah, Collado.
Yeah.
And, you know, it picked us all up and all gave us our chance. And yeah, it was, you know, I'd only sort of done 3 years in single seaters at the time when it gave up, when it finished. So I kind of felt like, you know, I hadn't had my true opportunity of single seaters compared to some of the others. But nevertheless, you know, it's kind of, it goes back to the old saying, don't be sad it's over, be grateful it happened, because, you know, I wouldn't have been able to open any of those doors without it.
Yeah, I think it's I don't think British racing probably, I don't want to say we took it for granted at the time, but when you look back now, because obviously it's been a few years since it ended, there's not been anything, I don't know about it beforehand, but there was definitely not been anything like it since.
No,
it was special,
not.
really.
Yeah, it was extremely special, and to be one of the people to been part of that program, you know, like, I mean, like, look at yourselves, you both probably tick the boxes to be a part of it, you know, British, good drivers. You know, some of it was luck, being picked up by them, being in the right place, right time. Like I said, going against Jake for that British title back in 2010 for sure put me in a big spotlight for it. And yeah, I owe my entire career to them, really.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because actually I had some conversations with Derek, who ran it at the time.
Yeah, that's it.
Because I'd just come in to cut. Yeah, he managed the program, and I came in. I was a bit too old, actually. It's basically why I didn't ever get a shootout or anything like that when we had the conversations. And I would say I was under the radar. I never had that big karting background, which, if you look at every other driver that Racing Steps have picked up, they tend to try and find you guys in karting and then bring you up through and make the transition with you with cars. And then if you look at actually every single name I think that was on that program is now a pro driver in some capacity, whether it be Jack Harvey in IndyCar, James doing obviously a bit of Formula E with Ferrari, you've got Ollie Turvey in Formula E, Jake Dennis in Formula E, McLaren Factory, you know, you've got everyone has made a pro career. So they definitely didn't do a bad job at all in putting you in the right situations to at least be able to say, I know you come from Chesterfield, it's not, you know, it's not Monaco, you don't have this massive, you know, funding behind you.
Monaco of the North.
Be able to, exactly, Monaco of the North. And you don't have these hundreds of thousands behind you. So for them to be able to pick these British, well, both drivers and, as we'll talk about in a minute, Alex, some motorbike riders as well, and some good ones, they've helped now be able to earn, you know, sums of money that you'll never have dreamt of, or being able to say if you went to just stay in karting and be the next sort of Mark Litchfield or something like that. Yeah,
exactly. You hit the nail on the head, and I have no doubt that that's exactly where I would have been, and I would have been doing had it not been for it.
Oh, sure. Was it John McPhee, Alex?
Yeah, I think John McPhee was the big name who came out of the Racing Steps side of the motorbike side of it.
There's already well, John's doing Moto3, isn't he? Successfully. There's also the young British guy. What's his name? Rory
Skinner. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So John's I think he's staying in Moto3 again this year with the Petronas SRT team. So that's the team of Fabio Quartararo from last season. So, you know, effectively he's teammates with Rossi this year, John. So and then also we've got Rory Skinner, who's in BSB this year. You know, he had a very successful campaign in British Supersport last year, you know, won loads of races on the trot and absolutely fantastic. And now he stepped up into the BSB class with the Factory Kawasaki team. So it's produced some really good names and really strong riders. Another mention to that is a lad called Dan Jones, Dan was involved in I think it was the final year of the Racing Steps program, and made brilliant progress, and now he's back in British Supersport as well in the GP2 class. So, I mean, on the motorbike side, the same as the car side, I think it did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it seems that way, doesn't it?
It
really seems that way.
Great names.
It also had the best livery ever seen in motorsport.
Did look cool, actually.
There was a 10th in that livery. I'm sorry. Yeah. You'd see. I'd see Ben in my mirror, because he would be in my mirror, wouldn't he? And see that red nose, always blue at one point as well, with the yellow helmet. And I was like, oh, for God's sake.
Going for a lunge.
Yeah, and I was going to that hairpin at Aragon, last corner, and like, oh, yeah, I know he's going for it.
Funny you say that, actually. This year, well, I say this year, 2020, when I did a couple of Formula 3 races and stuff with Carlin, was the first time I've ever driven a single seater without that livery. And that was, just little things like that's odd, because I'd always been, been representing Racing Steps and things. And you just, it was, like, say, such an iconic livery and something that was known to everyone. It did look good. It wasn't everyone's cup of tea. It was a little bit different, but, I was just loved it, grateful of it.